Hello there. Welcome to the 15th episode of Idiot Wind, where we bluster our way through Dylan Vinyl, the definitive collection. And this week we've got a very special and unusual album. And as usual, it's out of sequence. This isn't the next album in the sequence, it's the one after the next album. And the next album in the sequence will be in episode 16. I hope you're taking notes about this because Sid will be asking questions later.
I have so many questions to ask later, but anyway.
Okay, well, fire away.
No, you carry on.
This is the Basement Tapes, a very famous record, and it's covered in great, exhaustive detail in this magnificent magazine, which has a whole range of photos you won't find anywhere else. And just to make it even more special, you can see that picture again in the middle of the magazine. Well, it's a tremendous, worthwhile investment getting these magazines and putting them in a special binder, as I in fact do. The album itself was released in 1975, a very busy year for Bob. 1974 and 75 are both very busy. This album was released as a double album, and it was released only a few months after he released Blood on the Tracks. Blood on the Tracks was a huge critical and commercial success. He'd been under pressure for several years to release the Basement Tapes, which were recorded in 1967 after his big crash on his motorbike that was so serious. He wasn't really bothered about it. It was very widely bootlegged. Thousands and thousands of copies of The Great White Wonder and other bootleg editions of it were sold, particularly in the San Francisco and Los Angeles areas. Loads of famous people had this album already, or a version of it. We've recently seen Peter Jackson's Get Back, which is a brilliant three-part documentary about the Beatles and the Let It Be sessions. But there's a fair case to be made, I think, that with their idea of just getting together in a studio and rehearsing some songs, the Beatles are in effect doing their basement tapes in those sessions. And indeed, George Harrison keeps mentioning the band all the way through, and they do a few Dylan songs. So the influence of the Basement Tapes was reaching the most influential and important group there's ever been and ever will be. So it was quite wide in the world of pop and rock. Of course, Dylan never intended for the Basement Tapes to be heard at all officially. They were just a way of occupying himself and the band as they became in Woodstock. They were a way of group therapy. Everybody apart from Lev and Helm had been booed every night for scores of performances on a tour. And although they were fairly bullish about it in their public statements, they were obviously pretty badly psychologically affected by it. The music they play in the Basement Tapes is quite different from the music they were playing in 66 on that amazingly controversial world tour. There's more humor, there's more bawdiness, it's rough around the edges. You hear the sound of the band evolving before your ears, even though there's no real band tunes in the Basement Tapes. You hear the sound that became their trademark evolving around scores of cover versions and loads of Dylan new songs. So for Bob, who wasn't short of material at this time, he was in the midst of preparing another album after Blood on the Tracks. This was an ideal chance to finally release an official version. He had a big album already out. There was a big demand, and he got Robbie Robertson to take charge of the project. And as I'll come to, therein lies the problem. But this is a quite famous album. Sid, what did you think of it?
I did know this album before buying it, although I will say that this is the first copy that I've ever owned.
Yeah.
And I think, so I remember hearing it and stuff, or bits of it at the time. And what I liked about it is I do like that sort of sense of like a band in a rehearsal room. There is an intimacy to it. The quality of the recordings varies a fair bit because I gather, it's not all from the one session, and it's,
No.
and lots of it are missing anyway, etc., etc. But I do like I kind of like the breadth and range of it. There are some tracks which are very recognizable if you're a fan of the band. Tears of Rage, This Wheel's on Fire, things like that, and one or two others which momentarily escaped me. But overall, I like the sound of this album, even though occasionally the quality, the recording quality is less than optimal. But it's the spirit, I think, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's very animated. Even on the laid back numbers, I mean, they're all fairly laid back to one degree or another, but there is a lovely sense of people with nothing to prove. There's no sense of performance, there's just there's a sense of just people sitting in a room kind of working through material, and sometimes that material is done in a kind of, nobody's worrying about, I must get this right, and so that means the music's actually very open ended, and it's not nailed down. There's a sense that these arrangements are very fluid and are subject to change. I mean, I don't know, you will, but I don't know how, how the if you trace certain songs through, they may have evolved quite considerably. But so, I don't know, I haven't charted that at all, but I like that sort of sense of fluidity about it. And, not all of it, I'm not going to lie, not all of it. There's four sides of it. And
yeah,
for me, and I know that's only the very, very tip of the iceberg. And there's a 42 disc version of this.
Well, not quite 42.
Yeah, but not far off. But for me, I can probably get away with, a single album of this stuff. But I do like it. I don't. Funny enough, the side that I actually enjoy the most from one end to the other. Hang on, I'll need to get the track listing just to make sure I'm right about it. Yeah, that's it. I really like side 4, possibly because it's got This Wheel's on Fire.
Yeah, that's a great song, isn't it?
And that brings me to, I mean, I know that this was material that was being generated to give to other artists, almost like a kind of a sort of a show reel of material, which other people would cover. Well, of course, the first time I ever heard This Wheel's on Fire was when Julie Driscoll and Brian Auger released it. And man, what a version that was. It still kind of tickles the inside of my head. But I'm telling you, when I was a kid in 1968 or whenever it was, I should have looked it up when Julie Driscoll and Brian Auger released it. But it was either 67 or 68, maybe, possibly 69, although I don't know. Anyway, there was something about that. So that would be the first time I would have heard Julie Driscoll, for example. I certainly didn't know who Brian Auger was. And hearing it coming out of the radio was just astonishing. And there is something about Bob Dylan covers. People take the basic songs and make them into something fantastically epic. All along the Watchtower we've talked about before. The Hendrix version of that is just amazing. And similarly, it's for me, the Julie Driscoll version is right up there with the Hendrix version. It's phenomenal with that Mellotron introduction, that repeating piano line that seems to kind of be mysterious and spinning out, and really lends itself to the it captures the whole psychedelic era, which is interesting because this song isn't about the psychedelic era at all. It's about a much earlier time in American music making, and yet somebody has the imagination to say, I know what we'll do with this. Interestingly enough, where I don't find the original version of All Along the Watchtower particularly interesting or engaging, I do like This Wheel's on Fire. I like the original version of This Wheel's on Fire. I mean, if I had to choose between one or the other, I'd choose the Julie Driscoll one. But I do like this version of This Wheel's on Fire. It's great. There's something to it. And maybe that's to do with maybe there's a I haven't played it recently, but what's his name from the band's doing some harmony work with Dylan on the chorus, isn't he? Or is it just?
Oh yes. But most of these perform. I'll come to this in a minute because this is very complicated, but I should be short about it. On the original Basement tapes, most of these performances are live.
Yeah,
they're in a room and there's a reel-to-reel tape recorder. That's it. So is it Rick Danko or is it Richard Manuel? Rick Danko is the co-writer of This Wheel's on Fire.
Yeah, and which actually I don't think I knew that until relatively recently. I'd always known it was a Bob Dylan song, but I didn't realize it was also a co-write. So the short version of all of that is, for me, this is an album that I have a little bit of fondness for, and particularly if I could be bothered, what I'd probably do is I'd take the best of sides 1, 2, and 3, compile that into a decent 20 minutes, and have pretty much every
side 4.
On
it after that. Yeah,
one album. It's. I mean, some of the material is like incredibly cursory, but some of it is really strong, and it's just, I mean, as you pointed out, I mean, Dylan was just on fire during this period, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. And 67 was his most prolific year ever.
Yeah.
And I think he, in the sessions for the Basement tapes, which sessions, they just met up every day, he came up with about 64 new songs. And then later that year, he wrote 12 other new songs for John Wesley Harding as well. Yeah. So that's quite a productive year.
Sorry, just to stop you there for a second. I don't want to relitigate John Wesley Harding, but
great album.
But what interests me is that this material on here, which, as you say, he didn't use for John Wesley Harding, he came up with a bunch.
No, didn't use any of them.
The new stuff for John Wesley Harding, for me, it doesn't match up to some of this, some of the on here. But anyway, we've done John Wesley Harding. Let's not redo it.
Yeah, I think this is a souvenir, if you like, of one of the greatest episodes in popular music. They became legendary, out of Bob's control. He was very annoyed it was bootlegged. He didn't intend any of these recordings to be ever released. But of course, this was released in 75. That's 8 years after the recordings were made. So eventually he decided, let's put them out. I've got another album on the way. I've just released a big album. It's a good slot. It's not going to be the main thing of the year, but this was a big hit. My own feeling about this is it's important it was released, and we've not mentioned Greil Marcus's incredibly pompous sleeve notes as well. He says some quite remarkably inaccurate things in these sleeve notes. You're holding them in your hands. They've always been more of a rumor. Now you've got them. This isn't the Basement tapes.
No.
This is Robbie Robertson's travesty of the Basement tapes. There's 24 tracks on here, and a third of them aren't anything to do with the Basement tapes. A third of them haven't got Bob Dylan on them at all. They're band recordings. Yeah, I knew you'd say that. Some of them as late as 1975. And a lot of those recordings he's deliberately, some of which were recorded in quite lavish recording studios. He's like kind of distressed them to make them mono and to make them sound like they are. Yeah. Now, if you look at the actual Basement tapes, the interesting thing is there aren't any band songs. The only compositional contribution, I think it's Tears of Rage, is co-written Richard Manuel and Dylan, and This Wheel's on Fire by Dylan and Rick Danko. That's it. Every other original song is written by Bob Dylan, those 64 songs.
Yeah.
And one name that's remarkably missing from any of those co-writes is the name Robbie Robertson. Well, that's not the case on the Basement Tapes double album. Oh no, you'll find out he's added in these tracks. So we first go to a track that's not from the bloody Basement Tape, but track 2 anyway. But Zoo Street Scandal, written by Robbie Robertson. Katie's Been Gone, written by Richard Manuel, Robbie Robertson. So Bessie Smith, written by Rick Danko, Robbie Robertson. And we just carry on. It's just like Ain't No More Cane, traditional, arranged by the band. Ruben Remus, written by Richard Manuel, Robbie Robertson. And it just goes on and on. And the fact that he's taken a set of songs which he didn't sing anything on and didn't write anything on, and he managed to insert not only 8 tracks that aren't from the Basement Tapes, but several of which have got his own co-write credit on, when he knows this is going to be a big album. It's a bit weird, isn't it? It's obvious why he's done it. I mean, and he's also taking a production credit as well. Yeah. So he's possibly making nearly as much out of this as Bob Dylan, who's asked him to do it. Probably a bit surprised when he got the record. And it's not until 2014, which is a long time after this, that we get the legendary box set, which is the complete Basement Tapes. This is 6 crammed CDs. And when you first listen to this, you think, oh, well. But comparing it to this and playing it again and again, this is fascinating. This is really like you're in the room. This is all the surviving tapes are on here. And the last disc is kind of a bonus disc. It's some specially restored, the last tape they found, Garth Hudson found, sort of thing. But what's also astonishing is while he's ramming these songs on that aren't from the Basement Tapes, what does he miss off? Oh, there's Mighty Quinn, which was an actual hit produced from the demo from Manfred Mann, had a hit with that. The first 2 discs, there's loads and loads of cover versions, because at the start of this, they're just getting together to play. They're just shell shocked from what's happened in the previous year. So gradually he starts writing songs, and by the end of it, he's writing 1 or 2 songs every day, and he's bringing that song or songs in, and they're rehearsing them up and just taping them every day. So this goes on for months. Literally goes on for months. And so songs he's got Mighty Quinn, Is I Shall Be Released on here? Is I Shall Be Released on this record?
What, on the actual Basement Tape?
No. Yeah. No. Well, that's a pretty famous song, isn't it? Why isn't that on? Why hasn't he put that on? And you go on, and there's an amazing song called I'm Not There. And that wasn't until 2014, the year this came out, that was used on the closing credits, I think, of the film I'm Not There, which is about Bob Dylan. And that's an astonishing, no one had heard it. If he's got access to this, which he presumably had, why didn't he put that one on? And, there's Quinn the Eskimo, it's called here, Sign on the Cross, that's a great song. And on it goes, there's even a very funny, they do Blowing in the Wind One Too Many Mornings, and I've got another Bob Dylan song in a very kind of deliberately parodic way, which is quite funny. Old blues man, that's quite funny. And they just like, if I were a carpenter, he starts singing at one point. This is really late on in the sessions, but I don't know. There's loads of atmospheric and funny moments on this, and there's quite a few subsequently decided to be classic Bob Dylan songs. And they've all been sacrificed in order to get a few more Robbie Robertson credits on. And I find that, in retrospect, I mean, before that box set came out, I'd probably be more favourable towards the Basement tapes. But when you hear the actual Basement tapes, I think the double album pales in comparison. And there's a 2 CD set as well, and that's better as well. You know, I mean, I just think it's an unfortunate act of vandalism. If you got the album Let It Be, and it was full of tracks from Paul McCartney's first solo album from his own studio, it would be interesting, but you think, well, why didn't they put more of the Beatles on? And I think that's a bit like what's happened here.
I think it's interesting. There are interesting approaches to archive work, and I think this is one of the 75 when this came out, but actually it's responding to something, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's responding to the Great White Wonder album. It's an interesting period where the ground rules of archive work aren't quite fixed.
No, it's not like now when, you know.
I think there's a different set of sensibilities as you approach archive work. I mean, we've both been involved in, you know, albeit tangentially perhaps, but we've both been involved in archive, you know, producing a set of archive recordings by various artists. And I think it's, you kind of take a more honest approach to the thing. So I think back then, I mean, I don't know, I've not read anything about this, so I'm probably talking absolute tosh. But my guess is Robbie Robertson was making a different set of decisions based on because
let's make it sound more like a professional record.
Sometimes musicians, you know, for all sorts of reasons, you know, hear recordings and they want them to appear in the best possible light.
Yes.
Not because they're revisionists and you know, they want to perhaps put themselves in a good light, but they are sensitive to it. And I dare say Robbie Williams,
Robertson.
Sorry, Robbie Williams is somebody else altogether.
Yeah, Robbie Williams' Basement tapes is even worse.
Yeah. Robbie Robertson probably wanted to, you know, shine the best possible light on, and also he probably did want to put a couple of songs on where he would be getting a substantial writing credit. So because the sales of this thing will have generated a fair amount of income for them all. But maybe that's okay. Maybe that's a deal that everyone was okay with at the time. I mean,
I'm sure they were. I
don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know what the relationship was like between Robbie Williams and Dylan. There's a subject for a future podcast. What is the relationship between Robbie Williams and Bob Dylan? But my guess is, you know, there'll have been some kind of management trade-off going on about it. But what's out of this slot rather than the
out of this album? I'm not going to give you a song from the other album.
That you would narrow down 4 sides and you'd narrow it down to 1 track. What is that? Yeah,
This Wheel's on Fire. This Wheel's on Fire.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
I would. I think it's a great song.
Yeah, it is.
And it wouldn't be the song I'd pick off the box set, you know. But that which is obviously it's on there as well. I just think it's such an atmospheric and mysterious song. And it's got that, obviously the full riff is from Rick Danko, but that first line, if your memory serves you well, it immediately draws you into this world of what's he talking. You want to know more about this strange song, you know.
I think that's especially the case when it's sung by Julie Driscoll, and you're an 11-year-old sitting in front of Top of the Pops, and you've got Julie Driscoll singing that "If Your Memory Serves You Well" and doing all of that, and all the mellotron and all
the movements,
all the weirdness going on in my head. I've been faced with this, but it is a good song. It's one of those songs. I do think it's one of Dylan's better songs. I know it's co-written, and maybe that's why it's better. I don't know. But, for me, I kind of, my instinct was to go with Wheels of Fire, and then I thought, oh well, I better not pick Wheels of Fire because you know it's so obvious, and you know Sean will go for some really sort of deep cut of that. But actually, just for a bit of variety, so my default would be to pick this. But actually, the track that I really like, I don't know anything about the background to it, and I don't know if it's a basement tape, like a real basement tape thing, or some studio construct after it. But Open the Door, Homer.
Yeah, that's a basement tape song.
I love that. I don't know who's playing the guitar on it. There's some really nice picking on the track. It's great. It just has a charm to it that and a warmth to it. I have no idea what it's about.
No, but I mean, a lot of these songs are surprisingly funny songs, and they've got very odd choices of phrase in them. And there's a couple of times on the box when he's singing, you know, songs that are on this album and there's 3 takes to it, and they have to keep doing it because he keeps bursting out laughing in the middle of the song. And they're obviously all laughing along with him because they don't know what he's going to say half the time, and it's making them laugh quite a lot what he's saying. And when they start laughing, he starts laughing, and they have to stop. And you can hear this like pause, and they're all looking at, oh yes, let's get this. Let's do a serious one, and then he bursts out laughing again. But that says a lot to me about the mood of these sessions, which is probably very necessary for them in the time they were in.
The other song that which you did mention when you were talking about the co-writes and stuff and songs being inserted. The other song that I had a vague hankering to pick for, because I quite like it for all sorts of reasons, was the Bessie Smith, the song called Bessie Smith, and that has a certain kind of charm to it. But is Open the Door, Homer? Is that actually a Dylan song? Is it?
Yes, it is. It's definitely a Dylan song. I'll just double check that. So we're not yet. We don't get. I'm looking at the wrong magazine. That's incredibly stupid of me. I've got my pile of definitive Dylan. But it is a.
It is.
Yes, it is. It's written by Bob Dylan.
Yeah, sure. Oh, well, that's quite lucky then. But so
you've not picked a series of songs that are recorded by the band 2 years later. Yeah, well done.
I'm going to go with Open the Door, Homer, and you're going to go with Wheels on Fire, which would actually make it quite a good A and B side, I think.
It would a good double A side.
Kind of anti sort of one's an antidote to the other, I think. But right, so what's next in our Bob Dylan journey? We're going backwards in time, or we're
going back one. We're going back a few months,
right,
to an album called Blood on the Tracks.
Sounds good to me.